Jedi Survivor just came out, but the best way to get into a series is from the beginning, and thankfully, you can do that right now. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is available right now on Game Pass through EA Play, and we're taking a look on Xbox Series S. This review will be spoiler free. Before we jump in, a little bit of background on where I stand as a Star Wars fan. I've seen A New Hope, the prequels and Rogue One, and am one of the psychopaths that considers Rogue One the best Star Wars film. I've also seen the first season of The Mandalorian and played the LEGO Star Wars games as a kid, so you could call me a man of culture. I'm not a massive Star Wars fan, and yes, I really should watch Empire Strikes Back, but I dig the universe and was definitely looking forward to checking out Jedi Fallen Order. I preface the video with this because if you are a Star Wars fan, you're going to get more out of this game than someone who isn't. We cover a new game every single week, so if you enjoy the video, consider subscribing, it really helps us out. And with that, we're executing Order 66, and letting you know if Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is worth your time. Jedi Fallen Order is the midpoint between Soulsborne and Metroidvania. There's a lot of blended mechanics here, some for better, some for worse. There is always a central objective to follow in order to progress the story, but Cal is free to explore as far as his abilities will allow him. As you progress through the game, you unlock more Jedi abilities. You can push things, pull things, double jump, and even slow objects. The game is consistently throwing new things at you, and your skill set blossoms wonderfully. There are only a few planets to explore, but each is filled to the brim with secrets to unlock and goodies to find. Most of these secrets are cosmetic upgrades for your lightsaber, outfit, ship, or best boy BD1, but there are hidden gameplay upgrades like stims, life and force upgrades, and you get XP for pretty much everything, which allows you to unlock more on the skill tree. I think the skill tree is well implemented. The skills here are the flourishes to your larger abilities, and do a good job at providing smaller, meaningful enhancements to combat. Exploration is interesting here. The first time around it's really fun, but the game suffers from backtracking and there is no fast travel. Respawn have borrowed the bonfire mechanic from Dark Souls, and this creates a few gameplay issues. Like I said, there is no fast travel between meditation points. You have to backtrack manually. Even going the Dark Souls route and only allowing the player to fast travel between certain meditation points would have helped ease the annoyance of walking back to your ship. Moving around the environment is very fun, and each one has been meticulously designed to open up with each of your new abilities. For a first go at this sort of game, Respawn has done a really good job. Your meditation points also act as checkpoints. If you die, you go all the way back to the last one. For the most part, this is fine. Boss fights have a checkpoint right outside, and they're never spaced too far apart. However, you die very quickly in this game, and if you're not paying attention, it's very easy to lose a lot of progress. You do have the choice between resting and passing through meditation points. Resting refills all of your health, but also respawns all of the enemies. I like this choice, as it gives the player some agency on whether they think they can survive the road back. I ended up always resting, as it allowed me to have more fun playing with the combat. The combat system in Jedi Fallen Order is the most fun I've had in years. You get a lightsaber for crying out loud. It all does feel very Dark Souls light in nature. Dodge roll, parry, get a few lightsaber swings in when there's an opening, and throw in a few Jedi mind tricks for good measure. There's plenty of points here where you reenact the hallway scene from Rogue One, except you're Darth Vader, and it's awesome. Like I said earlier, you do die very quickly in Jedi Fallen Order, but there is a lot done here to make you feel very confident in approaching fights. Everyone has distinct attacks, and a well-timed parry will be rewarded with an awesome finishing move. There's also plenty of enemy variety, so each area feels like a fresh combat scenario and always had me itching to jump in. We also do have a few set pieces thrown in for good measure, like the bit where you're bored and drive an AT-AT. The game was just paced really well in terms of gameplay variety. There's a great blend between combat, exploration, and puzzles. Puzzles are few and far between, but I enjoyed all of them because I actually had to use my brain to understand the environment. Also, whoever at Respawn put this prompt in the game, I love you. Cal doesn't immediately spout the answer a millisecond after I step into the room, but I can always press the button if my brain is being a bit too slow. I love it. Finally, we should mention BD1, who has his own set of upgrades to help you out. I love this, and can definitely see the inspiration pulled from Titanfall 2. BD1 feels like a real companion, because without his help, you literally cannot progress. There's also a button you can press to ask him how he's doing. Truly a masterpiece of game design. Jedi Fallen Order certainly has some issues, but at the end of the day, it was a blast. I was staying up into the early hours of the morning with that one more bonfire feeling. It's taking a lot of willpower to not run out right now and buy Jedi Survivor, because my wallet will not survive that. For a first attempt at this sort of game, Respawn knocked it out of the park, and I cannot wait to see how they expand upon this base when I finally get my hands on Jedi Survivor. Jedi Fallen Order gets the full 5 out of 5 for gameplay. Yeah, this feels like Star Wars. Everything from the environments to the characters to the sound design and OST just feels pulled straight from the films. Hell, they even have the funny PowerPoint scene transitions. The thing that's really good about this is that Star Wars already has phenomenal art direction. Everything here feels part of a cohesive, distant galaxy, and it is magnificent. Let's start with environmental design. There are a handful of distinct planets to explore, from grassy Bogano to windswept Zepho and Braca, a rainy, braking facility, which was easily my favourite planet despite its short spotlight. In terms of gameplay, environments are layered nicely, combat arenas have a decent amount of choice, and exploration, whilst more linear, provides some great vistas. Character designs are great. There's not a big cast here, but everyone has a distinct look and is animated really well. I need BD1 as a pet because his animations and design are robotically adorable. I really love that enemies are all distinct in design, as combat can get pretty hectic, and it's really important to be able to get information quickly as a player. This is a great blend of art direction with gameplay. In-game animations are also top-notch. Once again, everything feels pulled from the films. The stormtroopers are rigid. Cal is basically liquid in how he zooms around slicing limbs with the lightsaber. The execution animations always feel great to see, and when things need to feel big, like this AT-AT, they really do feel it. In the same vein, sound design is top-notch. I honestly think it's impossible for a lightsaber to sound bad, enemy attacks sound weighty, and there's a wonderful ambience with each world. The OST also feels like it was pulled straight from the films, and when you're pulling from John Williams, that's a tall order. There was not a moment in this game where the score took away from the gameplay, it always added to it. Both the menu and gameplay UI are nice and simple, yet stylized. I really like the skill tree design, and when button prompts do come up, they are nice and clear, but don't feel out of place. Overall, the art direction here is fantastic. Jedi Fallen Order feels at home in the galaxy far, far away, and gets the full 5 out of 5 for art direction. The only thing missing is that big old title crawl.
That should still be enough to stop out this.
Remember how I said at the start of this video that if you're a Star Wars fan, you'll get more out of this? Well, we've arrived at what I was talking about. As a semi-Star Wars fan, the story here was easy enough to follow and engaging. We follow Cal Kestis on his journey to reconcile with his past and the events of the Great Jedi Purge. The main objective of the narrative is for Cal to restore the Jedi Order. It's not a complicated or massively original story, but it is told well. The main issue here is that Order 66 is not explained very well in the game. Respawn is banking on you having an understanding of Star Wars before jumping in, and whilst this is fine for fun references, like two soldiers being happy they have the high ground, it doesn't work so well for the main turning point of the story. So much of this story revolves around the Purge and how it affected our cast, but the reasons for the Purge itself aren't really given the time of day for people who don't know Star Wars, and it definitely hurts the story. I did like the elements of the story where things branched out, like freeing the Wookiees on your way to the next piece of the puzzle. Once again, it makes the world feel bigger than what you're experiencing. The cast is solidly likeable. I think Cal is a great protagonist, and I was engaged with his journey and struggles. Grease and BD1 are fantastic companions. I wasn't massively engaged with the second sister and Sere. Their conflict took a definite backseat. The story is presented well, cutscenes feel like the films, I love the little takeoff conversations, and the echoes that you can find give great additional insights into the world without forcing you to read a text document. Also, the ending is nice and definitive, and caps off everything with a grand show. I am excited to see where Cal's story goes next, but the ending I have is decently satisfying. Overall, Jedi Fallen Order is getting a 4 out of 5 for narrative. Respawn is taking a simple formula and bolstering it with a mostly likeable cast, but I think the narrative leans a bit too hard on pre-assumed knowledge from the player, and thus can't truly stand on its own.
Yeah, I'm okay. You alright? No, you're not doing that again.
Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a great content package with some good settings, but it is a technical mess. Optimized for Series X and S, yeah right, I'm starting to notice a trend with Respawn, where they make fantastic games that don't work and don't get fixed. I had a multitude of technical bugs, framerate drops were the most prominent, I had more instances than I could count of the game stuttering and chugging along. Cutscenes also have a lot of pop-in between shots. On top of that, I had a lot of gameplay issues, invisible effects, falling through the floor, and invisible enemies just to name a few. There is a lack of polish here, which is even more baffling considering this is the second release of the game and 3 years after the original came out. Usually, by the time we get around to reviewing, most of the bugs are sorted out. Fortunately, the content package is feature-rich and complete. You're getting a full single-player campaign filled to the brim with combat, exploration, and lots of optional goodies. There's a lot of nice cosmetics to find, and even a new Game Plus mode. There are 4 difficulty options, and you can have up to 5 save slots. Settings are also pretty nice. Controls can be viewed and completely remapped to your liking. You can choose how auto-switch targeting works when you kill an enemy. Button mashes, QuickTime events, and UI input holds can all be disabled. You can auto-lock targets in combat and auto-grip climbable walls. HUD text can be scaled. Subtitles can be enabled and have further settings for scale and background. The default subtitles are nice and readable, but further options are always welcome. There are also major text language options. Motion blur, film grain, chromatic aberration, and camera shake can all be toggled. There is a brightness slider. There are audio sliders for game, music, effects, and dialogue volume. You can also select your audio output and adjust dynamic range. Overall, the settings here are really nice for the most part, lots of toggles and game-specific accessibility options. There are some bigger missions though, no refined control settings is a bit weird. The game does feel good to play, but it would be nice to have some additional tweaks. Oddly, there are also no colorblind filters, but everything you need to interact with in the game either has a visual texture or a big button prompt, so this can be worked around. The only accessibility setting that I was left wanting was a way to adjust the enemy glow when they are about to do an attack that you cannot parry. By default, this is red, and this is a pretty major gameplay system. I had trouble seeing the prompt, especially with the final boss, which takes place in a room that is almost entirely red. This is the sort of thing that can be a detriment to the player experience, and I feel like it'd be a really simple adjustment. Overall, Jedi Fallen Order is getting a middling 3 out of 5 for specs. The content offering and settings are nice, but this game really needs another polished pass because I encountered far too many bugs and issues during my playthrough. These issues aren't insanely detrimental to the experience nor game-breaking, but they really should have been ironed out by now, and from the sounds of it, Jedi Survivor is no improvement on this front. It took me around 10 hours to beat Jedi Fallen Order. If you're going for 100%, you'll be pushing around 15 to 20 hours. I think this is a solid length, and going for full completion doesn't feel too far out of reach once you've beaten the game. There's also New Game Plus, which lets you play around with all of your abilities from the get-go, so makes for a decent reason to replay the game from the beginning. Gameplay commitment is mostly solid, there is plenty to learn to master the mechanics, and the time and effort I put in to get better at wielding the lightsaber felt worth it, and was an integrated part of the experience. There are some gameplay related commitment issues though. First up is the backtracking. This is not the biggest problem in the world, but at points it can feel like the game is just trying to prolong its runtime, and getting from one place to another can be a pain. However, the biggest gameplay commitment issue is the bonfire system. This raises a multitude of problems when trying to manage playtime. First and foremost, you can only save at meditation spots, which means you must reach the next one in order to wrap up your gaming session if you want to keep your progress. This makes fitting Jedi Fallen Order into your free time a bit of a gamble. Meditation points aren't massively far away from each other, but you don't have the freedom to save at your leisure or know where the next one is. Meditation points also act as checkpoints. If you die, you get sent back to the last one you rested at. Boss fights are forgiving and have the spots right outside the arena. You don't even have to watch the cutscene again, but there are some sections of the game where getting set back can feel quite punishing and frustrating. Finally, the transition to exit the game is a bit awkward. You have to find a meditation point, use it, then back out of the meditation point, and then open the menu and quit. You can't just pause whilst in the meditation point. To cap everything off, hard drive footprint is pretty big at 51 gigabytes. If you have slow internet, a data cap, or limited hard drive space, do be aware. Overall, Jedi Fallen Order is getting a 3 out of 5 on our commitment scale. The game is a decent length in terms of both story and 100%, and my time playing felt well spent. Unfortunately, there are a lot of commitment issues baked into the mechanics. You really need to set aside some time to play and ensure you can reach the next meditation point. And dying, especially later in the game, can feel like time wasted as you plow through 20 enemies you've already killed. These issues aren't insane, but they are something to be accounted for. There's also the pretty sizable hard drive footprint to boot. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a fantastic gameplay experience supported by wonderful art direction and a solid narrative, but held back by technical issues and some weird design choices. It is worth your time for the combat system alone, but in general, Respawn has made an excellent first step outside of first-person shooters. There really is a lot to love here, and I hope that Jedi Survivor can expand upon this great foundation.
That makes us who we are.